14 months after terrorists murdered 4 Americans in Benghazi, Libya, and after months of repeated requests, congressional investigators will get their very first chance next week to speak to CIA contractors who were first on the scene that night. California Congressman Devin Nunes is a member of the House Intel Committee, and he will be there next week. He's written a letter raising questions about what exactly went down that night. Congressman, good to see you tonight. And so in your letter to Speaker Boehner, you praise the work of the committee, which has been led in a bipartisan fashion, and that's true by all accounts, that they've been doing their best to look into this in a fair way. But what are the big questions in your mind as we now go into the week where you will finally hear from a CIA contractor or CIA contractors, I should say, who were actually eyewitnesses at this event?
Well, if I had to list them in order, I think the biggest issue, there seems to be a timeline discrepancy. So, for example, when the gentleman came back from the annex or from the embassy compound back to the annex, there seems to be the narrative that the administration put out that there was a lull in the fighting, that the fighting had stopped.
And let me just stop you there. Let me just stop you there and catch people up, because the compound was attacked where our ambassador was, and there was a CIA annex not far away, and people came from the annex to try to help the ambassador. Then he had already been killed, but they took some people, they brought him back to the CIA annex, and fighting resumed, and 2 more people were killed. Go ahead.
Right. So when they came back after Ambassador Stevens was killed, he was actually missing. Which is an important point. Sean Smith was dead. They came back to the annex. The story goes that there was a lull in the fighting. There wasn't going to be any more problems. I don't think that's what we're going to hear from the survivors, from the people who were on the ground. So then that begs the question, well, was there air support called in? Why do we have a team back at the State Department called the FES team that is funded with taxpayer money? They had a plane ready to go. They had people ready to go. They couldn't have been there in time to save the ambassador, and probably not even to save the other 2 special operators that are killed. But we have to ask the question, who made the decision and at what level not to send this counterterrorism team in from the State Department?
What has been the explanation so far? That the fighting did stop?
On its way to Libya.
What has been the explanation so far? That the fighting did stop and therefore there was no need to send a team because they thought it was over?
Right, they thought it was over. And so you can say, and the administration has been quick to point out, well, that wouldn't have saved lives. Well, that's not the point. We still have terrorists who are on the run. We have not brought one of the perpetrators to justice yet. And part of the reason why is the counterterrorism team that's made up of across all the agencies of the government was not sent to coordinate that response team, not to coordinate the investigation. So we didn't have anybody on the crime scene for nearly 3 weeks in Benghazi. And so now here we are 14 months later without bringing any of these people to justice, and other news agencies have actually done interviews with some of the terrorists that attacked that night.
There's an interview, I think, in the New York Times who talked to the guy sipping a strawberry frappe, sitting out there at the cafe, and yet the New York Times can find him and we cannot. What in your letter you raise questions about whether CIA agents are being, or officers are being intimidated, whether they have been polygraphed to ask whether they've spoken to the media and spoken to congressional investigators and others. Do you believe that there is an effort possibly underway right now within the government to shut down communications and to keep some story secret?
Well, I do believe there are a lot of news stories that are from credible news organizations that have raised this issue, but I do believe that members were asked to sign non-disclosure forms, and I want to know why that is. I want to know why they had to sign non-disclosure forms after Benghazi. There's not a good reason for that unless they were trying to intimidate people.
Before I let you go, what would be the reason for all of this? Why? Why would they not have sent a backup team? Why would they not be coming clean about exactly what went down and how?
Well, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of, and that's why it's so important next week to talk to these survivors. So I'm not one of these guys who's going to jump out there and jump on a conspiracy theory, but I can tell you, as someone who's been trying to get answers, it has never been so hard for me, as a member of Congress who represents people in California, to get answers from our own government. And it's about time we had those answers, and that's what starts next week.
This is a big moment in this case, for the first time for you guys to be able to speak with these CIA contractors who were there, unlike so many. Thank you so much, Devin Nunes. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Megan.